Are you tired of all the voices who say, focus on the bottom line numbers?
Say whatever you have to, just close the sale.
Just get the credit card. It doesn't matter what you deliver.
You will never build a successful business until you grow a pair and stop caring so much.
Here, we respectfully disagree. We give you permission to embrace who you are, how much you care, and encourage you to design a business that works for you and your clients. Welcome to The Art of Giving a Damn, the podcast that proves with every single episode that you can create a profitable business doing what you're passionate about and making a positive difference in the world. Now here's your host, Michelle Schaefer.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of The Art of Giving a Damn. My guests today are Meredith and Jasper, who have been helping business owners market their businesses and grow their businesses online for more than 10 years. They are the founders of solobizhacker.com, a free tips and tricks site that was born out of a podcast they did together where they interviewed 100 successful entrepreneurs. They've got tons of things to share with you today. Their book is The Escape Plan, 6 Steps to Leaving the Job You Hate by Creating a Business You Love. And these two have more experience in business, especially the technology side of marketing online, than just about anybody I know. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
Yeah, hey, Michelle.
Glad to be here.
Yeah.
I am so excited to get to pick your brains here for a minute, because I know the marketing automation piece of things and how do you create that business you love is really a question that a lot of people struggle with. We know it's possible, but then when it comes to actually doing it, that's a lot easier said than done.
Right.
So let's start with this. What got you guys started with the business that you have right now?
Okay, so I'll tell my story and then he can tell his, because they're different stories. So about, 12 years ago now, I was in Washington, D.C., and my daughter was 3, and my whole family, lives out in this half of the country, but I was living in D.C., and so we decided to move. And my husband's an engineer, and so he looked for jobs out west in alphabetical order by city, and we ended up in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Okay.
Which is awesome, except... right? The economy in Washington, D.C. is really different than the economy in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And so I kind of half-heartedly looked for a job here and really was offered 20% of what I was making in Washington, D.C. because I was a public information officer for Fairfax County. I was doing really well, but the jobs that were available here were sort of kind of the same thing. We're paying $11, $12, $13 an hour, right?
Ouch.
And so by the time you put your 3-year-old in daycare,
right,
it just doesn't make any sense. So I thought, I saw an ad for Assistio, and I thought, virtual assistant, I can totally do that, right? So I did that. And so I've had clients ever since then. It's been 12 years. And then what I discovered, though, is that I wouldn't say I was a horrible virtual assistant, but my value was really in the marketing and all of my previous experience with that was much more valuable to my clients than the nitty-gritty admin stuff. But the other thing that was valuable was that I am a bit of a techie, so I can figure out how to make it all work and what the right thing is. And then you marry that with marketing, and it makes for a really fun job for me and really a good value for my clients. And so Jasper, I met him at a co-working space, and he started out as my intern. But I will let him tell the rest of the story.
Okay. Well, now I'm really curious.
Yeah. Well, I actually did my degree in archaeology, and when I came over to America in 2006, my sort of new wife, American-born wife who lived in Phoenix, I didn't realize that Phoenix was actually built over the oldest pre-Columbian civilization in America. And
wow.
So having discovered that, I walked into a field archaeology job, which is horribly paid, but it's really fascinating work and really lovely people to work with. But all that archaeology is funded by development. And of course, Phoenix was expanding rapidly at the time until 2008, when the crash happened and basically all development stopped overnight. I did the archaeology. So I thought, okay, so what else can I do? And I had some HTML web design experience. Blogging was just coming up. I read the Shell Israel book, Naked Conversations, about the power of blogging. And that really, I could see the potential in that. So I got into that, and social media just coming up. So I started doing that. I actually worked a BizOp company in Phoenix based on my HTML chops. And I didn't know for like 6 months that it was a BizOp company.
Wow.
I discovered that it was, and but I learned a lot of stuff in terms of online marketing there, and really, so in fact the graphic designer and I branched out on our own and started this blogging company, and then of course we moved from Phoenix to Albuquerque, and so I had to sort of get new clientele, and that's why I ended up at the co-working space.
Wow, all right.
And what I did sort of dovetailed quite nicely with what Meredith.
Yeah, we didn't really want to compete for people.
Yeah.
Right? We didn't really want to have to, because we overlapped enough that we'd be feeding off the same people. So we're like, why don't we just combine forces and do this together? And we've been together ever since.
Wow.
We got into podcasting, which we riff off each other really well, both in terms of, just working, but in terms of the podcast. So it was very entertaining and great fun to do.
Or I just like Remington Steele.
Well, I can imagine. I've definitely got some questions about the 100 interviews, but, one thing I love about what both of you shared was this idea of, okay, well, what can I do next? And when you hit that what do I do next moment, you just jumped in. And even though it's not quite what you're doing today, you allowed that to evolve for yourself. So you went with, okay, this is what I can do right now. Let me just jump in. And I think a lot of times people hesitate to jump into an online business of their own because they're trying to get it perfect or figure out exactly what to do first.
Because I was thinking about this, Michelle. Like, originally, when I was in Virginia working for Fairfax County, which is, very stable kind of government job sort of thing, I thought, well, yeah, when I retire from that, I'll go start a PR company, and it was something just to think about when I retired, I'll start a business. And then just life kind of happened differently, and I started it sooner. But I think a lot of people are waiting for the perfect time.
Yeah, I think that's true. People do wait. They're waiting for the pieces to fall in place. And sometimes life just throws you a curveball and it's like, okay, now's a good time. I love what you said too about figuring out that not that you were a terrible VA, but that your genius really was in this other area. And I think that's something that is I think a lot of us have that evolution in business where what we start doing, we realize, oh, this is the thing I'm really good at. This is my genius zone. And then you move into how do I make this piece of it work? I love that. So tell me a little bit about the podcast and how you guys got inspired to start that and do 100 interviews.
Yeah, well, we started off, the first one we did was using Blog Talk Radio. And we basically...
Expounded. I think we did one of those. We will teach you for an hour a week about Infusionsoft. So I don't know if anyone ever listened to it, really.
Well, we know some people listen to it because we were at a conference down in Houston, and somebody came up to us and says, "Oh, we listened to your podcast," which was really nice.
Like from across the room,
that's pretty cool.
Your voice.
Yes.
That's awesome. So the first one was just kind of a marketing automation.
Yeah, it was really teaching. It was really, every week we would talk about some concept that had to do with, at that time I was an Infusionsoft consultant.
Right.
And so
that's about when we met.
To do with Infusionsoft.
Yep.
And how, all of that worked together. And so we did that. But then we discovered that really we wanted to talk to other people about their businesses. And at the time we were running a labor exchange, kind of like a time bank. So basically different entrepreneurs would talk to each other and trade hours. And it didn't really work because there was no way for us to extract money out of that transaction really well. And people were really hesitant. They were really willing to give their time. Like everybody would give their time. They were really hesitant to take the time back from other people. It was really a fascinating experience, but this podcast went with it because it's talking about different people and how they got their passion and how they needed a mentor to, you know, move forward and all of this stuff. And so that's what it was about. And then we did it the craziest way possible, right? So we did 100 episodes, and I think we recorded them like in 2 months or something insane like that. And so we just and we met a ton of people. Yeah. And we got a new and noteworthy for iTunes, both our video and our audio podcast. So we you know, were fairly successful with it. We just at the time didn't know how to go any further with it. Like we did it, and then Time Traders Club, we decided that wasn't really like, we weren't getting enough out of it to make it worth it for us to continue doing it. Yeah. So we put the podcast on hiatus. We're starting it back up again, so I'm excited about that.
Oh, fun. Okay.
What we did learn, though, we got a lot of really interesting stuff about the process of starting a business.
And how long it takes.
Yeah, especially how long it takes. But both from people, you know, who are leaving corporate jobs to start up a sort of consultancy business, all sorts. So we learned, you started seeing themes develop in terms of all these people's stories, and that's really what led to us writing the book. We sort of extracted those themes and then expanded on those in terms of our marketing knowledge, and then used those bits of the stories from the podcast to illustrate each of the different themes. So,
nobody was an overnight success.
Yeah.
Like you know, the quickest one I think was like 18 months was like the fastest one of everyone we interviewed. And then also like a guide appeared to them. Like they always found, like not even necessarily like a paid coach, but they found somebody who was doing something similar to what they were doing. So a guy wanted to create a spice company. So he found somebody that could help him figure out how to bottle the spices hygienically, which was the big bottleneck of starting a spice company. Somebody else was doing hair shampoo for women, African-American women with hair, you know, which I don't have that issue. But, you know, like if I had that issue, I would certainly want beauty products that tamed it down, right? And so she made it for herself. And so she had to find somebody who could help her find the right places to market it. And that person appeared to her. So it's just like kind of being on your path, and then your guides show up. And that one guide is kind of what made them be able to do their business 100 times over. Yeah. You know, it was fascinating to see.
Yeah, that's such an important piece of, I think, success in anything, because you can either make all the mistakes yourself and take, 10 years to figure it out, or you can go find the people who've already done it and figure out, okay, what did they do? How did they get it to work? And it makes such a huge difference.
And people are so willing to help you, it's just a matter of asking.
Absolutely. So for anybody listening or watching, the book is called The Escape Plan, and I'll put a link near the video or audio to make sure people can find that. It's available on Amazon. What would you say is the biggest thing that you learned overall from doing that many interviews and speaking with that many people who had decided to take that leap and start their own business?
I think it's don't give up. I mean, I think, and we interviewed people it was really a range.
It sounds like it. Yeah,
we had beginners and we had people with $1 million businesses and everything in between. And the thing I noticed about the successful people is that they had issues and they had obstacles and they almost quit. All of them almost quit at some point because it's hard. Yeah. Or the money ran out but they didn't. They were committed enough to their idea to kind of keep following up and keep talking to people. And if one person isn't the right person, go to another person and just keep, and I think that's the mistake that a lot of entrepreneurs make, especially in the beginning, because there's this sort of idea that people have to, condense their thing into 10-minute videos.
Right.
And so they're condensing their business journey into 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And so you don't see that, oh yeah, and then I had a webinar service for a while and that just drove me crazy and it didn't work, so I tried something else. You would never know that because the guy just LinkedIn. All of the false turns that everybody has, and it's just a matter of keep trying, keep going. And then, people do make it through, or they're not interviewing with us, so that's the other thing. But
right.
I think
the ones who hold on are the ones who make it.
One of the big motivations for us that really came out of this podcast, but even before, as we, right from the start when we started working together, was the fact that, especially as this was born out of the crash, right, and everybody was really struggling to find jobs, there was no work around. One of the things and of course the internet was pretty new. I mean, when I started, blogging was really taking off. I mean, things like YouTube and Twitter were just emerging.
So please don't tell me you did your initial programming on a Commodore 64.
No. But the point was that we could see that the possibilities in terms of people being able to create livings on their own terms by reaching an audience online. Most business up to that was just local. So you found your local audience by advertising the local newspaper, all that. This changed the whole ball game.
Well, and it was a big factor for me in my business.
Yeah.
Because here I am in Albuquerque, New Mexico, right? I can't find a job in Albuquerque, New Mexico that pays anything. So all my initial VA clients lived within 4 blocks of each other in Manhattan because they could pay me.
Yeah.
I said, oh yeah, my rate's $40 an hour. And they're like, okay.
Yeah.
In Albuquerque, the head of the department doesn't make $40 an hour. They make $45,000 a year. So it allows you to compete in a different economy than your own where you live.
Well, and it allows, we worked, one of the fellow co-workers she was a virtual assistant, college educated, young girl, 2 really small, kindergarten age kids, had absolutely no hope of getting a job where she could manage those 2 things.
Right.
What she could do was manage her VA business in her, work those times around her life, but earn $40 an hour doing it, not $10 an hour in Walmart,
Right.
And to be able to empower people to be able to do that is, that was our huge motivating, it was the motivation behind everything we did, really. And
Time traders, the whole thing, yeah.
Well, that's one of the things that's fascinating. I think you probably found this when you interviewed people too, is even as people shift in and out of, okay, well, that didn't work, let me try something else type things in business, there's that common thread. There's that, this is what motivates me. This is what I want to do. I'm going to figure out a way to build a business around that. So I love the idea of leaving the job you hate to create the business you love, because I think that is why a lot of us end up going the direction we're going. Is it's a driving passion. This is what I want to do. This is who I want to be there for. And it's funny because one of the things you mentioned a minute ago, just to kind of totally do a 180 on topics here, you mentioned that the people who succeeded were the ones who kept going with follow-up, who kept going and just pushing through. And it's funny because I know that's one of the things that in a totally different way you guys talk about now, is that concept of the biggest mistake a lot of entrepreneurs make is they're leaving so much money on the table. They're literally losing money because they're not using automated follow-up and some of these strategies. So let's talk about that for a minute.
Okay.
What are the biggest mistakes that you guys see entrepreneurs making online?
The biggest thing is people don't think of their full growth machine. People concentrate on the beginning of it, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's all log in, opt into my opt-in, get the name on the list. And then they think once the name is on the list, maybe they'll send them through a sales sequence maybe, but it'll be really short. It'll be like 2 emails. And then they won't do anything with that person anymore. And they'll be like, oh, okay. Or they'll have a webinar. And this is like the classic thing that beginners do all the time. And I had this client who did this amazing launch, and she got 40 new people in her first launch into her membership thing that's $200 a month. That's awesome. I mean, huge, right? But she's like, oh, no, I thought I'd get 80. I'm like, but you haven't sent any follow-up messages yet. You know?
Oh.
I mean, she rocked it. I mean, she really rocked it. I'm like, you really rocked this. I've never seen anything as awesome as this before for a new person, their first time at bat. Wow. Now send follow-up messages and you'll get 40 more. And she did. Right? Awesome. And I think that's the mistake, is a lot of people buy on message 10.
Yeah.
Not, oh, you have the webinar, here's the replay. Okay, we're done.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's funny because we know that in real life, right, in regular like offline business, they say the fortune is in the follow-up. You got to stay in touch with people. And we know when we're networking in person, like that's required. You got to do the follow-up. But it's like sometimes we forget those things also apply on the internet and virtually. I remember when I first started doing webinars, kind of the same thing. I was doing a webinar and selling into a blogging workshop, and I would get sales on the webinar. I'm like, awesome. And then I'd send out the replay, and that was it. And I did one with a partner. We got done with the webinar. We made, I think it was like 18 sales. And he asked me, okay, what's your follow-up? And I was stumped. I'm like, well, I was going to send out the replay, and I could just like over the phone conversation, I could hear him shaking his head. You know, it was like, oh, okay, apparently there's more follow-up that's required here. And he helped me put together a follow-up sequence. I think I had 7 or 8 emails in it, and I got like 23 or 24 more sales from it. It more than doubled the amount of people who chose to join the workshop. And I was shocked. I was like, how have I not been doing this sooner? I mean,
because people are afraid of bothering people.
Yeah.
And, you know, and so people, but you're actually doing a service, because people are super distracted. And if they're anything like me, they probably aren't really watching your webinar anyway. Like, they might be watching your webinar, but like they're not.
Right.
Like, they're sort of like fading in and out of your webinar, and then their husband comes in and wants to go get coffee, and they're off before it's even done. You know, so it's like that. And so by sending them more than one reminder, you give it a chance to actually show up in their email box, because only 20% of emails ever get open on best case.
Right.
So 80% of emails don't. So it's not like anyone's noticing that you're sending them that many emails. They're just noticing it when it's a convenient time for them to notice it. And you have to send emails often enough for them to rise to the top of the email box so they can find you. They might really want and need your service, but you'll never know. It's the same thing with the people who write the stories in the emails that you have to read the email before to see. And I'm like, nobody reads all the emails. This like doesn't make any sense. It's not like anyone's going to be sitting there waiting for your next, oh, is Michelle's email coming? I've got to see. What are her 3 loves this week? It's Sunday. It's 3:45. I haven't seen it yet.
The soap opera style.
Yeah. And so, you know, and that's another mistake that people make, is they think that people are paying attention and they're not. And that's a good thing and a bad thing.
Right.
So the good thing about it is that you can be super repetitive. You don't need to reinvent the wheel every single time, because they didn't read it the first time.
Right.
There's that sales pyramid diagram that shows that like only 3% of people are actually ready to buy now. 7% more are sort of like open to the possibility, but then 30% hadn't really thought about it. 30% more sort of are pretty sure they don't need it, you know, that kind of thing. So it takes time. You've got to nurture people along until it ticks in their brain. Oh yeah, actually, that could be useful.
Absolutely. And that goes back to, you know, the idea that sometimes we're not aggressive enough with the follow-up, with letting people know, hey, this is how I can help you. Because you mentioned a lot of people, they think they might need help, but they're not quite sure yet. And if we don't do the hard work of actually saying, here's how I can help you, then they're
over and over again and over time too. Because it might be, like you and I have been dancing around in circles for decades, right?
Yeah.
You can't tell she's that old, but really.
Thank you.
There you go. But you know, and I wasn't ready to, you know, do anything with you until I was ready to do something with you. And then it was the right time. But I'd been on your list for 6 years before I thought, I raised my hand and said, you know, that sounds good. I need a little bit of accountability, so I'm going to go in the mastermind group. So you don't ever know. And I've had people out of the blue on my list that I thought had died or moved away or closed their business or whatever. Like I just hadn't heard from them. And then they send me an email saying, hey, how's it going? I've been following you. Like you haven't been opening my emails, but okay.
Well, and that just shows the importance of consistency with all of it, of not just having a basic follow-up sequence in place for your webinars or your videos, but also just consistently staying in touch with the people that are on your list and with your social media following and everybody, and just giving them those invitations to, hey, if you're ready, I've got something that might be a good fit for you.
And then the other thing, and this leads to the thing that people just don't do, is consumption. So you buy somebody's product on blogging, and you know, everyone starts out with their little ebooks, right? So you sell your little ebook on blogging, you send them the ebook, and maybe if you have your act together, you send them one more email like a week later. Hey, have you checked out the thing on page 78? It's like my fave. You want to coach with me? Awesome. And that's the last email you sent, right? Ever to this person. But really, you know, you sort of have to figure out in your head, okay, so if they read this book and they're actually doing it, when are they going to really need to talk to me again? Right. It's really like in about 3 months, because I help them through a content calendar for 90 days in my ebook. So I really ought to be talking to them on day 75, saying, how's the content calendar going? What results are you getting? And so it's getting that follow-up over the long term. If you're selling soap, right? I had a client who sold soap that had magical powers. It was amazing. It's a magic soap.
Interesting.
I said, so how long does it take someone to use your magic soap up? She's like, 3 months. I'm like, okay, so we need to 2.5 months in be sending them emails with specials and sales on more soap, because you know that they're running out. Right. So you're helping them. And she got a ton of sales because people were running out of soap right at that minute. And she'd send them the email and they'd be like, how do you know I just ran out of soap? I'm like, well, you sell soap. So, you know,
That's fantastic. And I think a lot of people don't sit down and think those things through when they're building out those campaigns of, okay, based on what somebody's got right now, when's a good touch point for me to reach back out? And I think the cool thing about the way you guys approach it is, because I know if I were sitting here listening to this podcast right now, I'd be like, I have to track that for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Where do I even start? But you don't, because you can automate it all.
Yeah, exactly.
And you guys have the systems and the things that you put in place for people that actually automates all of that. So really it's just the initial, okay, what's the plan? And then you put it in motion and it continues working for you.
Basically, you know, we had some clients who were babe store owners. And what we did is we helped them create sequences based on the different kinds of websites that people, the pages people were visiting on their website. So if people were really interested in flavored vape juice, then they would send them emails about flavored vape juice, because that's what people were into. And there are so many multi-talented, I guess, I would say, people in this industry that have businesses that are really like 2 or 3 faced, and the different faces kind of go together and kind of don't. You know, the people who sell gemstones and write things for people, stuff like that. And so this is really handy to have the side events. Active Campaign does this really well. And I think, and Infusionsoft doesn't do it as well, but different, you know, email services have different abilities. But, you know, you can track people so that you're talking to them about what they're interested in. Instead of if I'm having someone write something for me, I'm not as interested in the stones. I don't want to hear about the stones. I want to hear about the writing. And so you can manage that a little bit nowadays, much better than you could ever before.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that kind of goes to Jasper, what you were sharing about being able to track people as they go through your website and the different pieces of it. And I know if I weren't familiar with a lot of the technology, I'd be going, okay, but only big companies can do that.
No,
you land on a site and you may be shopping for shoes, and then everywhere you are, the shoe is following you around and you're getting emails about them. And it's like, who's watching me? But the cool thing is there are actually affordable options for smaller businesses and entrepreneurs to be able to have that same kind of technology work for them. So let's talk about that for a minute. You guys are big fans of Active Campaign. So tell me about that.
All right. Well, Active Campaign, I think, is the best value. Like if you combine it with ThriveCart, which is a shopping cart, I think those two together do what a lot of much more expensive services do for a lot less money. And it does allow you to compete. It spooked me at first because I literally could watch, like Jasper was on the website going around and I was in Active Campaign in his contact record and I could see Jasper visited this page on the site. Jasper visited that page on the site in real time. Like I knew exactly where he was. And think about it as a coach. You have, a clarity session with somebody and you can look on their contact record in Active Campaign and know exactly what pages on the website that they visited. And it gets even better because you can run Facebook ads that parallel your email campaign. So somebody goes to the webinar, so then you start sending them Facebook ads about come to the webinar, it's at this time, which is a lot less expensive.
Yeah.
Because you're targeting them directly.
Exactly. So many people who I hear say, my Facebook ads aren't working, nobody's clicking, I'm not getting any response. The first question I ask them is, well, how's your targeting set up? And if they're doing things like that, retargeting people who are already interested, they're going to be so much more effective.
Right. Then trying to, and that's how you compete as a small business in the land of the big business. In order to target everybody in the world, like some of my MLM friends, anyone who has a face is my target. You have to have an ad budget. Like you have to compete with Coca-Cola because every one of those sets of eyes costs you money, right? So if you're a small business and you're niched in and Facebook allows you to really target people and Active Campaign allows you to really target people, you can get your little world of 1,000 people, right? And you can make a very good living off of that small community that needs exactly what you personally offer. And that's the only way to compete in this big world with a small budget. You can get in front of them just as many times. You're just not getting in front of as many people.
Well, and that's the thing is most of us, we don't actually need 10 million customers to have what we see as a successful business.
You kind of need 10.
Smaller number. But for a lot of people, 10 clients is I'm booked full.
Yeah.
And so when you're smart with these different strategies, the awesome thing about the internet is it really is an equalizer. With the technology and automation that we can set up, we can actually compete in the market.
But people resist it. Like people really resist that. And like find your little tribe and they're like, oh no, I don't want to turn away the opportunities of all these people in Thailand, and I'm like, no, like really find your people.
Well, and that goes back to what you said about the difference in the New York people that could afford you in Manhattan versus people in Albuquerque. When you're targeting countries, you've got to think about that as well, is which countries that speak English actually have the per capita income to afford your services. And some of those questions are sometimes hard for us if we don't have a business background to make those like hardline distinctions of, okay, this is a business decision based on my goals. These are the things that, I've got to say yes and no to.
Well, that's the one thing I just written a blog post about this, but all business is sales. And with sales, it's like, if you have a goal of making so much a month, it's like, and my sales closing, I can close, say, 40% of the people I speak to.
Because he's that good.
Then how many people do I need to speak to make those sales to reach that goal? And most of the time you want to talk to the very best prospects. And that's what a lot of this automated features can do, because what they can do is they can take all those actions that people do, give it a score. So maybe an email is, you open an email, that's a score of 1, but you visit a particular website, that's 5.
Right.
You sign up for a freebie, that's 15. And then as soon as they hit a threshold, which basically tells you this person's really interested.
Yeah, you call them.
It will, the system will notify you and say, hey, you need to call this person. And that's sort of like gold, because otherwise you don't want to have to be going through all those contact records going, okay, who's been looking at my website,
Right. So many of the things that we know would work, they're not really scalable if we're trying to do them just, one person looking through all of that. But with technology, suddenly all of it's possible, and it saves us time, and it helps us get, like you said, the best prospects.
And it helps your customers get the best out of you, too. Because you're providing really good customer service through that 3-month out consumption message. It's not all about selling them something. It's really about helping them to really absorb and integrate the material that you're offering, and reminding them about it and saying, hey, you 3 months ago you wanted to blog. Are you still doing that? And that's helpful, actually.
It is. It's helpful.
Forget,
Well, it's helpful because it both, if somebody is consistently doing it, then they're probably at the step where they're ready to have a conversation. And if they're not, it's that little reminder of, hey, do you still want what you said you wanted? So that they can stop and look at their decisions and go, oh, yeah, I did sign up for that planner. No, I didn't do anything with it. Maybe I need some support. Maybe I do still want to make this happen. So it does provide, better service for the people that are on your list. So speaking of, putting some of those things in place, I know you guys have a gift to share, which is if somebody's listening to this and you're going, okay, I want to start putting these follow-up systems together. I'm not a copywriter. I'm not a tech genius. Where do I even start?
Right.
I have a set of emails that are designed.
We do. They're templates, and we did that on purpose. So they're sort of bullet point templates so that when you write it, it sounds like you. Because I don't want you cutting and pasting my email message and sending it to your people who are going to be like, that doesn't sound like...
Yeah.
I mean, I only had one client ever. I had this client from Louisiana that I could write her, but that's only happened once that I could write in someone's voice like that. But generally, I want it to sound like you. But these are like 5 emails that you can put in a sequence after your webinar, and you will probably double the sales. I've seen it happen.
Absolutely.
Clients before, because you're just giving them more of a chance to see you, and you're putting yourself out there in front of them more often.
Right. So for everybody listening, watching, we'll put a link somewhere near the audio or video where you can go to get those, but the link is solobizhacker.com/double-your-webinar-profits. Double your webinar profits. And again, there's going to be a link you can click somewhere near this video or audio. Go grab those. It'll help you put that follow-up in place so that you can get more sales coming in and you're not leaving money on the table for people who actually really want to work with you. Give a few reminders because we're all busy, right? We've all got a million things going on. So where can people go to find out more about maybe having a conversation with you, Meredith or Jasper, about getting some of these automated pieces in place so they can really leverage technology to scale?
Well, so the best place to start is our website, and that's solobizhacker.com. And also, I am always available via email, so just send me an email, Meredith@solobizhacker.com. I'm really friendly. I don't bite. I'm happy to answer questions. And so that's another way to get in contact with me and just sort of ask some questions and run some things by me and see.
Well, it helps a lot. Yes. Well, like you said about the 100 interviews, one of the things that successful people have in common is they do find those people who can help and support them along the way, mentor them, guide them through some of these processes. So if you're listening or watching and this is something that's grabbed your attention, this is an area that you can step things up in your business, reach out, get in touch with Meredith and Jasper and find out what might be possible. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast today. I appreciate
Thank you, Michelle.
Time and interesting conversation. All right. For everybody listening, be sure to subscribe, rate, review, hit like, and tune in for the next episode. Thanks for listening.